Divorce lawyers of Reddit. What's the most outrageous reason someone filed for divorce? My aunt was dating an unemployed dude for a while. He was staying in her house rent-free. They got married and were getting ready to go on the honeymoon when the new husband tells her he's not going because he has to take care of his plants at the house. Big fight. Aunt goes on the honeymoon with her sisters instead. She comes home and tries to kick him out of her house. He refuses to leave. She tries to get the police involved. Dude is live streaming on Facebook how he is being trapped in his own home. Police tell my aunt there is basically nothing they can do. Can file for eviction after a divorce. Dude gets to live in her house with his precious plants for like 3 months until everything legally gets worked out. Why would she opt to marry a person like him? He was very diligent about watering the plants. Paralegal. A couple got divorced over a cat. Wife called cat Snowball because of white fur and only wanted the cat to eat wet food or chicken breast. Husband called cat Lily again because of white fur and believed it should only eat dry food. These two argued for a year over custody of the cat but did not give about their human kids aged 15 months, 4 years, and 6 years old. My aunt had a case where the wife had glued all of the outdoor hoses together so he wouldn't spend more time washing his vehicle anymore. When the glue didn't work, she just cut them all up. When he bought new ones, he filed for divorce. My 90-year-old client, the husband and his son retained me to initiate divorce proceedings with his 88-year-old wife. They'd been married 60 years. The wife had recently taken to beating him with his own cane because their daughter poisoned her into thinking he was hiding money from them. The battle came down to husband and son versus wife and daughter. At their first court appearance, my client showed up in an old 1950s style pinstripe suit and fedora. He was a farmer his whole life, and this was clearly the only suit he owned. He was such a meek and lovely old gentleman. I had to pass my client on to a new lawyer midway through the proceedings because I accepted a job in a different country, but I understand the divorce was eventually granted. Colleague handled a case where money was not an issue but the kids were. Neither parent wanted them. I represented actress, webcam model who filed for divorce from her husband who also did the /WBCAM model business. He would do gay on the side because the pay was better. She was hesitant about it, but dealt with it because the pay was decent. Both sides had an agreement that it wasn't cheating as long as it was for work. One day she came home early and found her husband in bed with 2 men. They were not filming. That was too much for her. Needless to say, the old conservative judge couldn't wrap his head around this one. I'm imagining explaining this situation to my grandfather and am having a hard time because I think he would have a stroke before I finished explaining. My dad was a divorce lawyer. He had a client who wanted to divorce her husband for 2 reasons. Did not have enough hair on his chest. He did not drive fast enough. Keep in mind this was in the 70s when chest hair was a bit more important. Yeah, it would have been embarrassing to show up late at a pool party and your man not having a decent chest bush. She was kidnapped in Mexico and he refused to pay ransom. Eventually, her family managed to pay and she was left on the side of the road. It is not outrageous as in petty, but outrageous as how absurd that is. Edit to answer all the questions. I don't know how much they wanted as ransom, but it was substantial as the conversation between her family and him was how he had it liquid and they had to liquidate investments to get that amount. She may have told me, she may not. Something in pesos and I didn't know the conversion rate. It was all a random number to me. This happened about 7 years ago. He wasn't with her on the trip. She was traveling with cousins and went downstairs alone to get ice cream and wait for them to get ready. I do not know all the details. She was extremely distraught talking about it and it was not necessary to pry. It was clearly traumatic and even tough. I had a million more questions. I left it alone. Honey, I love you, but we agreed to save up money so we can purchase a house. Your ransom would really set us back. I don't really think I can add a ransom line item to this month's budget. Everything is already super tight. Now, honey, you know the family policy. We do not negotiate with terrorists. I'm an intern, but the judge I work for used to do divorce work. He has some crazy stories, but this one is probably the most outrageous. Though the divorce was pretty justified. Every morning this couple would sit in the bathroom together while one of them had their morning dump. One would sit on the toilet and the other on the rim of the bathtub. This particular morning the wife was on the toilet and husband on the edge of the tub. They started to argue about their relationship, so the wife reaches down, pulls a tampon out and flings it at husband. I'm told the tampon stuck for a brief second to his forehead before sliding off. He filed for divorce that same day or the next. I knew a guy from a high school job who divorced his wife of 2 months because she would sleep with a nightlight, but he could only sleep in total darkness, as they apparently never lived together until after getting married. He hated her nightlight so much that he would often sleep on the couch instead, but sometimes he would claim the bed for himself and lock her out of the bedroom for the night. This was an eccentric late 40s man working at a Burger King who acted like all the other high school co-workers were his best chums, and often told us these weird stories. I'm glad I don't work with him anymore. Knew a couple who were married for only a few hours. Bride's side of the family was being disrespectful to the groom's side at the reception. He brought this up on the way to the hotel after the reception, which caused a heated argument. Bride calls up her family who arrived to the hotel and start a fight with the groom in the lobby. Groom called his side of the family as well. Hotel lobby turned into a screaming match field, and they separated there and then. It was such an extravagant wedding. What a waste. I was a legal assistant when this case came in, but this lady divorced her husband of 2 months because he got her an iPad case for her birthday instead of the expensive jewelry she wanted. My client put his wife in an assisted living facility based on a misdiagnosis, the medication of which caused the wife to be unable to care for herself. While in the facility, my client Shaka started dating another woman and methinks began using hard drugs. He used a load of money on both of these things. She eventually got off the medication and got better. Suffice to say, she was not happy about what had transpired. Friend of mine divorced his then wife because she would only speak French when her family would come over. She was Spanish, as was her family. To add, her family spoke English, French, and Spanish. He could only speak Spanish and English. She got bored of being married to him. Her family basically talked about him whilst he was there. It was only when he recorded a conversation whilst they were there and got it translated he found out what was going on. Wasn't the reason, but did happen during the course of the divorce. Neither side would follow the court orders. When they had to go back to court, they were fighting over a pistol and the man's grandmother's bowls. I assumed for weeks that these bowls were some sort of heirloom or expensive china. When they finally brought the bowls in to swap, they were Tupperware. He got drunk at the wedding. She did not like it and decided to divorce him right after the honeymoon, which she went to without him. Moreover, this was all an elaborate scheme of divorce robbery because the guy was loaded, and so was his entire family. They were loaded because they were a family of excellent lawyers, and he was a third-generation lawyer, with all the smarts and experience of his predecessors combined. Let's just say it did not go well for her. NAL, but my father's best friend divorced his wife over her cooking. Apparently, every day he would come home to amazing cooked meals. Here, she couldn't cook at all and was ordering food from different restaurants. She even went as far as dirtying pots and pans to make it look like she cooked all day. She got away with this for almost a year before he caught on. This was back in the day before you could check your bank statements online. And since she did all the billing, he didn't notice how much money was missing that she was spending on takeout. Knew a couple a little over a decade ago who I was close friends with. The wife wanted children, and after several months of trying plus a doctor visit later, he was found to be infertile, unable to have children due to his sperm. She filed for divorce several weeks later. Then one random hookup later, she got pregnant from a one-night stand while the proceedings were still going. He used that in the court battle, which assisted with him taking the majority of their possessions post-split due to her actions. It's not a ridiculous reason, it's a ridiculous scenario. Happened to a friend. Girlfriend wanted a cat even though it was against rules in that building. My friend caved and they got one. Then she brought another one home without asking what he thought about it. Didn't get that one fixed, it had two different litters. When it was all said and done, they had 12 cats in a two-bedroom house, and she didn't think it was a problem even though it drove him out of his mind. I've told this story here before, but the short version was that a dude was married for something like 20 years. Wife would get up each morning before he was awake and do her makeup. He'd go to work and all was well. One day she decides to meet him for lunch across the street without makeup. He'd never in his life seen her without makeup. He walked in, couldn't find her. She was devastated. Divorced him because he couldn't recognize his own wife. Thanks for watching.